This is Bleav in Buckeyes. I'm Bryant, All-American cornerback Chimdi. Chekwa. The show is brought to you by FanDuel. Today, we got a very special guest. We got my man, Mike Wachsman, coming in to join the show. He's been covering college football for over 30 years now? That's not quite as old as us, but it's getting there. Mike, what's going on?
It's definitely getting there. No, it's fun. Thanks for having me on. Again, we're coming up to the end of the season. Hard to believe. It seems like it wasn't that long ago that it was week 0 and Kansas State and Iowa State were in Ireland.
Yeah, right. Time has flew by. Chim, what's going on? How you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. I'm just, refreshing my Twitter just to see any updates on the transfer portal. Hey, man, it's been an interesting time since Buckeyes lost in the playoffs. Guys start jumping the transfer portal. I don't think we felt this yet. Like, this is the first time that it's felt like this, right? There's been transfer portal activity the last couple of years, but this year is a little bit different. Mike, I talk about refreshing my Twitter. I actually kind of follow your post a little bit to kind of get some of those updates of what potentially could be happening. You might have been one of the first people I saw post about Earl Little as a potential option. I just to get started, like, what is your take on why this season, from a transfer portal, from a exodus standpoint for Ohio State, is different than the prior years?
I think it feels different, one, because just the sheer volume of players. I think it's like up to 30 now. But I think in the previous years, there really haven't been a lot of guys that people said, oh, well, that guy was going to start or that guy was going to maybe heavily contribute. But you've got guys like Quincy Porter, who, if he wasn't going to start, he was going to play a pretty major role. I saw that he committed to Notre Dame. You had Fahim Delane in the secondary, who looked like he was maybe the next guy up. He decided he didn't want to wait when they found out that they were going to be recruiting some safeties. Mylan Graham, who may or may not be gone, but just you've got guys who this year were more than just fill-in pieces. These were guys who were definitely going to be in the mix. So it looks like it hits a little harder. And not to mention the guy who maybe was going to be the kicker, he decided to transfer to Tulane. So now they have a big old blank spot at kicker. So as I was saying off camera, maybe they'll just go for it, go for 2 every time.
Yeah, no, that would be a crazy approach, man. We some old guys, man. We're Trestle guys, man. So we like to kick field goals. We like to, get an extra point. We don't like all that craziness of the tush push and 4th and 2 going for. We don't like that kind of ball here, Mike. But yeah, but it's definitely different, man. Right? I think we got 25 scholarship guys, like you say, 30 total jumping into the portal. It feels like at this point we really lost 2 classes. I feel like we lost the 24 and 25 class at this point. Do you think this is a much different approach that Ryan Day is taking to college football? We see how old Miami and Indiana is. Are we on that same path?
I think reluctantly, yes. I think he wants to still do the high school stuff, but I think he's seeing the teams that were in the Final Four of the college football playoff. A lot of them were pretty heavily built on the transfer portal. Indiana, especially, Miami. Carson Beck is a veteran. You got to have a veteran at quarterback. I don't think that they're going to stop recruiting high school guys, but I think what you're going to see in the near future, you're going to see classes shrink to about maybe 17, 18 guys, and they're going to be guys who can play 5 stars, 4 stars. It's going to hurt the kids who are the 3 stars who maybe were saying, I want to go somewhere where I can get developed. I don't think the Ohio States, the Oregons, the Texases are going to be taking that many of the developmental guys, because if they sit for 2 years, they'll leave. And it's going to be 2 years of wasted time for them. So I think you are going to see a different approach. And I think we're seeing it now with the guys that they're going to get. The Terry Moores, the Earl Littles, the guys who have veteran experience. And I think whether Ryan wants to do that or not, I think it's kind of the reality of college football now going into the mid to late 2020s.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that, because I got another perspective on some of the 3-star guys, in that it really depends on the money for me, because when you're competing for 4 and 5-star guys, there's a certain level that you you would assume you have to pay just to get the kid compared to another school, like if you're competing for the same guy. There's another guy who you have, he checks some certain boxes. Say it's a corner, right? He's fast enough to play at this level. He does some good things that we see, but there's something that makes him a 3-star player and not a 4 or 5-star player. But as a coach, and I know corners, there's certain things that, okay, he's not a 4 or 5-star player now, but I feel like I could develop this kid. If he's willing to take a little bit of a discount in terms of the money, like he's not getting a lot of money, maybe he's a local kid or Ohio kid, there may be an opportunity to actually keep that guy multiple years and develop him if that's something he's interested. Where keeping a 4 or 5-star guy on the bench and having to pay him not to play doesn't seem like a path forward in this type of environment currently. I'm curious your thoughts there.
I think that and there will be exceptions. I think you make a good point. The Ohio kids, the ones who maybe dream of growing up playing for Ohio State, they might be the ones who do it. And you make a valid point about the money. I just think some kids will weigh the money. Some kids will weigh the, I can get developed and it doesn't bother me if I sit too much. But some kids are going to want to play, and whether they're 3 stars or not, if they've sat for 2 years and maybe only been on the field for special teams, they're going to say, well, you know what? I can go to the MAC and I can play right away and I can probably get about the same NIL or maybe a little bit better. And so it just comes down, are they thinking about money? Are they thinking about playing time? Are they thinking about development? And all cases are going to be different. I just think that with a lot of the high school guys, if they're not playing right away, you're right. They're not going to want to be willing to sit on the bench unless the school is just massively overpaid for them. Then they'll say, you know what? I can bide my time because I'm getting $2.5 million and I know my time's coming. I'll just sit here and wait. But seems like a lot of guys want to play.
Yeah, because it's interesting because, you kind of start to hear stories. I know we kind of spoke about this last week, Tim, about it was a young man, a wide receiver at Texas. He put out his statement that he was interested in the portal. And basically, more or less, he kind of said, like, Texas told me I'm not really welcome here anymore. Do you think Ohio State is really kind of taking that approach with some of these young guys? Obviously, I'm an Ohio guy, and I look at some of these guys on the list, like Bryce West, Aaron Scott, a couple other of these Ohio guys that their dream, to Marion Witten, their dream was most likely to one day be Ohio State Buckeyes. Do you think Ohio State is maybe kind of telling them a little bit more than just, it's more than money? Like, hey, we really kind of nudging you out the door. You'll figure it out on your own. Do you think some of that is happening here?
I think without saying it, I think that maybe, I think that what Ryan does is he just says, look, we're recruiting more guys at your position. And if you want to stay here and work and compete, then great. We'd love to keep you on. But if you don't, and you think that you have a quicker path to playing time somewhere else, we'll certainly not get in your way. I don't think he's telling them we have no plans for you to play. I think there are some schools that do that. I mean, I think Coach Prime has shown, hey, I'll show some of you guys the door. But I don't think Ryan is quite that brazen, but I think he does tell the guys, we're going to recruit X amount of guys at offensive line. We're going to recruit X amount of guys in the secondary. And if you guys want to stick around, great. If not, we're not going to hold you up.
Yeah, and I'm curious, and because there's another way to say that. So if you're a guy who's getting maybe $200,000 a year, and the year ends, and we say, look, we're gonna pay you $100,000 this year or $50,000 this year. We're gonna bring some other guys in to compete at your position. I mean, the writing's on the wall, right? It's like, you valued me at this amount last year. Now you value me a little bit less this year, which means maybe you don't see me as a future in this position, and you're trying to bring somebody in who you potentially do see as someone that can be a starter on this team. Do you think the money conversation has changed for a lot of these guys entering the portal, or is it truly that there's opportunities to make more elsewhere that's driving some of that decision making?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think that maybe some of the guys thought, okay, I'm kind of next up, or I'm right in line for something. I should get a bump of X%. And Ohio State comes back with a lower figure than that, or doesn't bump it up at all. I think there's a little bit of both. I think we're seeing what the guys are getting in the portal. They're valuing proven production over potential high ceiling, because for all the high ceiling guys, for all the ones that make it, that there are guys that maybe they get hurt. It's not their fault. Maybe for whatever reason, they just don't live up to billing. The guys that that have put some tape out there for 2 or 3 years and have been pretty productive, if they've been productive in a big time setting, then you probably feel pretty confident that with your coaches and with the athletes you have around them, they're going to be productive for you as well. And it's less of a risk to pay them more money than it is to pay a kid who maybe was a 5-star, but has maybe gotten like 50 snaps in his career.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. Yeah, so, I mean, obviously, like I said, we got a lot of guys in the port. I guess, Chimdi, I'm just going to announce real quick the guys that has already landed in the spot. Bryson Rogers going to USF with Coach Hartline. Jelani Thurman going to North Carolina. Lincoln Klingholz to Louisville. Bryce West to Wisconsin. CJ Hicks also to USF. Sam Dixon going to South Carolina. Logan George, Washington. James People, Penn State. Jackson Corville, like you say, landed at Tulane. Who it is? Nick McCarty, Arizona State. That's a punter. Got an offensive lineman and Isaiah Kimma, the Utah. Tegra Chibola, Kentucky, who was a former starter. Tough to see him go. Quincy Porter to Notre Dame. Maxon Roy to UCLA. Eric Mensah to Virginia Tech. Jorquez Carter, defensive tackle, going to Miami. All right, those are the guys that's left. Let's talk about the guys that are new Buckeyes here. All right, we're going to get that out of the way. Let's talk about some of the guys that we actually landed. And like you stated, now you was kind of first in line to kind of speak about some of those defensive backs that we brought in, and Earl Little Jr. and Terry Moore. I know you've been following these guys for a little bit. What can you tell Buckeye Nation about what we should see out of those guys at the defensive backfield position and what they bring to the table?
Well, Little led Florida State in tackles, and he played kind of a hybrid safety. Not quite what Caleb did for Ohio State, but he was not exclusively a nickel, not exclusively a safety. They put him in different places. He had 4 interceptions, and for a safety, that's actually a pretty high number. He's a pretty deep. I don't want to say he's a guy who packs a super wallop, but he can hit you. He's a good tackler. I think he played better at the beginning of the season. Florida State played better at the beginning of the season, and they kind of tailed off. But from what I've read, he seemed like he was a guy who was just a really good leader. And I know that Florida State had their problems. There were times, though, that the defense really flashed that it was a pretty good unit, and the offense is what had the problem. So I like him from his experience standpoint, the fact that he is a little versatile. He could play nickel. He could play straight safety. And then Terry Moore, 2 years ago, Pro Football Focus had him as either the 1st or 2nd rated safety in terms of their grades. So he's a guy who he doesn't get out of position. He's an excellent tackler, can play against the run. And Duke, surprisingly, they had another guy at corner, Chandler Rivers, who's probably going to be a fairly high draft pick. They had a pretty good 1-2 punch in the secondary in 2024. So those are 2 guys I like. Christian Alliegro, the linebacker that they got from Wisconsin. He's kind of a guy who just has a high motor. Sometimes that takes him past the play a little bit, but you're always going to notice where he is because he's just running. He's always near the ball. And then the guy that I think that people might be sleeping on a little bit, John Walker on the defensive line that they got from UCF. I know that he had Ohio State in the mix the first time that he was being recruited. UCF did not have the year that people expected them to have, but he was a guy who really got a lot of notice. He's hard to move, not quite like K-Mac, but he's a guy who can be hard to move in the run game, and he can push back into the pocket and kind of create some problems there. So I think some of these guys that they've added, and then the 2 Alabama guys with Quay Rousseau and James Smith. Smith has been in and out of the lineup, I think, with injuries. Rousseau is a guy, he can play straight linebacker, he can play edge, so he's got some versatility. So they've gotten some guys, and then actually they picked up a quarterback, Justin Martin from Maryland. He's young. He's just a depth piece. You know that Ryan wants to have 4 quarterbacks in the room. They were not going to go in with really the only true backup being Luke Fahey as a true freshman, because if Tavian St. Clair has to come in and then he gets hurt. So I think that was a pretty smart move. Now I think they're going to need to, and they got a tight end from Northwestern, Hunter Welsing. who I don't think a lot of people know about him. He had almost 30 catches last year for a Northwestern offense that was kind of hit and miss. I don't know if this signals, they got a guy from Ohio University also. I don't know if this signals that maybe that means Max Clare is leaving. I know that would give them like 5 or 6 tight ends, and I know that they're not against that. Ryan wants wants to like an NFL team, and tight end is actually a pretty valuable position now in the NFL. So to me, it would say that maybe Max is going if you're bringing in a second guy. But maybe we'll get surprised and Max will stick around, and these guys can be, one of them can fill like the Will Kazmarek role, the blocking and kind of the catching to just move the chains. And the other one can be a little bit more of a receiving threat. I mean, they went to OU once and it worked. Maybe it'll work again. So they've got guys. I don't think they're quite done yet. I don't know what they're looking at for offensive line. I still think they need some depth on the offensive line. They definitely need a kicker or two, and I think it wouldn't hurt to maybe get another corner. I think they've got safety pretty much filled with Little and Moore, but I think it would help the depth in the corner room. I think there's only 6 true corners on the roster right now.
Yeah, that cornerback depth is something for sure to focus on, and what approach they take. I'm interested if Little becomes kind of the full-time corner. Nickel corner. But it seems like it's trending in that direction. I kind of want to talk about Bo Jackson because for a little bit we thought we lost him, right? There's a lot of reports saying that he was out of here. The money that he wanted was too high. What was your take on that process and what happened?
I think that he's kind of a good example of what's going on in the portal now. I think that obviously coming in as a freshman, they went out and got C.J. Donaldson. I think a lot of people thought maybe that C.J. Donaldson would be the one who had the big year, and James Peoples was expected to do well, and that Bo would be kind of a guy who, as the season went on, you would see him kind of coming on. But he kind of took the reins early in the non-conference season, not really the Texas game, but after that, he was a leading back. He did put up the production. Obviously, he wanted a raise, and I think that his play signaled that he deserved it. But I think a lot of these kids are getting I don't want to say bad advice, but I think a lot of them are getting overvalued by whoever is representing them, because running back, as good as Bo was, running back is not a priority position anymore, at least in college, because it's always a committee. You're playing 2-3 guys. And unless you're really like a Jeremiah Love, and even he had Jadarian Price, but Jeremiah Love was far and away the best running back in college football. So when you're a star like that, in the past, someone like an Adrian Peterson, someone like a LaDainian Tomlinson, those are the guys that are really the benchmark guys. Bo had a really good year, but looking ahead to next year, is he a top 5 running back in college football next year? Probably not, probably top 10. So he's thinking, I need to get paid like a top 10 guy. Well, Ohio State, and we can touch on this maybe next, the way that the portal is being handled by them now is a little bit different because stuff has come in-house. Instead of the foundation being involved, Learfield has taken on a lot of the NIL, so it's in-house now. They don't have, the foundation used to be the guys, okay, you identify the guys, we'll go out and court them, we'll tell them what the deals are, we'll tell them this. Learfield is kind of waiting for the guy to come in and then say, here's what we'll give you. So it's a little bit different approach now, and I think Bo wanted X, and I think Ohio State said, this is what we have right now that we can give you. And I think that he balked at that. And obviously, after 24, 48 hours of a standoff, they obviously, both sides moved a little bit. And Buckeye Nation is happy that Bo will be one of the cornerstones of the offense in 2026.
Yeah, that's a good point that you brought up, Mike. I mean, can you explain that? Because it's a little confusing, right? Especially for even us, right? If you're on the outside in and you're trying to figure out, okay, what does that mean? We got the foundation here. They're talking to guys. And now, like you said, it's in-house. Now you got Learfield, and Learfield are making statements about what they're going to do in the NIL world and the percentages and things of that nature. What can you give us and then the fans of the show here a little bit of a breakdown of how all this works?
Well, basically, before Learfield took over, you had the foundation, you had the 1870 1870 Society or whatever
Society.
they were
Yep.
called.
Mhm.
They were obviously not only getting donations from fans, but they had their own money, and they were able to, when Ryan Day and the coaches said, okay, we like this kid. We think that this kid might be worth in this ballpark. And they would go out and they would tell the kid, hey, we're going to give you this. They would say up front, this is what we feel comfortable giving you. Learfield wants almost the kid to commit to the school before they throw money figures out, partly because the way that I've heard is that they don't have as much in the coffers for portal and retention. They've got the $20.5 million that all schools get. They cannot overspend that, but they're supposed to divvy that up between all of the sports. That's not just football. So basketball's getting some of that. Hockey will get some of that. Not every I don't think every player on every team is getting paid, but that money is supposed to go to all of the sports. So when people say, well, they've got $20.5 million for football, they really don't. I think it's closer to 15 of that is allotted for football. And then whatever Learfield has makes up the difference. Well, the foundation, there are no caps on outside. Like if there's a collective, there's no caps on that. There are the 20.5 is a hard cap. No, the schools cannot go over that. And then anything else. And I think bringing it in house, the other part of it is Ross Bjork has gotten some heat, some of it justified, some of it, I think, a little bit presumptuous. He's trying to gauge what the landscape is. There aren't any hard and fast rules on this. They've basically given kind of parameters, but they don't sound like, the NCAA doesn't sound like they're penalizing anybody for what would seem like an egregious overreach, I guess, in money. But I don't think Ross wants to overreach, because who's to say the NCAA won't come back later and say, we're going to avoid these deals because this violated this and this violated this. They don't want to be left in a lurch. They don't want to have guys leaving. So when it's in-house, the other part is Learfield it's almost like if you had a company and you hired an outside firm to do your advertising for you, rather than having someone on your staff. You know how your guy on your staff is going to work. You don't know how these people are going to work. And so you've kind of sold your trust to an outside entity who may or may not be as qualified as the guys that you have in your room. And in the end, I mean, in the foundation, obviously at Cardale, you had Brian Schottenstein, you had some guys who knew the landscape, who had some money, who knew how this stuff worked. And now Learfield, being a big corporate entity that handles a lot of the radio and the advertising and all that stuff, they're going to come at it from a completely different standpoint. They are not going to identify prospects. They're just basically going to look at the money part of it and say, this is what we have. We have $36 million or we have $40 million. We can't go over this. So if you want to pay Jeremiah this, it's going to leave us with this. So it's a little bit different, and with no hard and fast rules set by the NCAA, I think you're going to see some teams like Ohio State treading lightly, and you're going to see some teams continuing to do what they do and say, you know what, penalties be damned. We're going to kind of live in the moment now and take big swings.
That was a Texas Tech shot. I could hear that, Mike. That was a shot.
and honestly, there won't be any penalty. If we're being honest, there won't be any penalty. I mean, it's too many. It's too many schools not following the rules. You can't punish everybody, or you don't have a sport. So at the end of the day, those who are pushing the rules, pushing the boundaries, are going to be in a better shape for this part of it. I do want to get your take on some of these players just kind of testing the transfer portal market. If you think about a player who's been in college for 3 years, right, and he hasn't played significantly, right, at that point you have to make a decision. And one is, I got to play some football. I got to get on the field. And two, if in a couple years I don't make the NFL and I never play this football thing again, right, I need to at least make the most amount of money that I could within what I'm trying to do. And it does feel like some players, and not just at Ohio State, are entering the transfer portal and fielding offers, taking visits, and then seeing, okay, what's the best offer? Maybe it's Ohio State, maybe it's another school. And so and Marlon Graham is someone who's still in the air. So what's your kind of take on that approach to some of what the players are doing?
It's difficult. I mean, if I was in a player's shoes and I came in and I knew I could play and I'm in a crowded room like what the receiver room was, I'd probably think about, maybe not after year one, but year two, I'm thinking, okay, I got to get on the field. And he played a handful of snaps this year and didn't catch a lot of passes. And he's got to think, okay, do the coaches not like me? On the flip side, guys don't play. The coaches aren't just randomly saying, okay, we don't like you, so you're not playing. There's things that go on in practice. You guys know, you guys were in practice, you practiced, you started. You saw guys who thought they were great, but for whatever reason, maybe they weren't great practice players. Maybe they weren't consistent. Maybe they did one thing every game where the coach said, man, you're killing us with this. And so there are reasons that guys don't play. They're not just putting names in a hat and saying, we're going to play, for instance, we're going to play Bryson over you this week, Mylan, or we're going to play Dave Adolph on senior day over you. We're just doing that. There are reasons why guys don't play. So some of it is, I do think that they want to play, but I think some of it is on the players too, that maybe they need to look at, am I doing everything I need to do? Make yourself indispensable where the coaches have no choice but to put you out there, even if it's just on kick returns. I mean, we saw this year, we saw Lorenzo Styles he got hurt a couple of times. They rotated him in and out with Devin Sanchez, but he had that 100-yard kickoff return in that one game. And from that point on, he was in the lineup all the time until he got hurt again. Do something that makes yourself indispensable, and you won't have to worry about, well, I'm not getting as much playing time as this guy. So from a money aspect, I think with the high schoolers, as we talked about before, I think you're going to see Ohio State be a little more cautious as to how much money they're going to give to guys coming into the program, whether they're 5 stars or not. I think Chris Henry Jr. might be the one exception for this year's class, and Jeremiah obviously was the exception for his class. But I don't think every 5-star is just automatically going to get $1.5 million, $2 million, whatever the going rate is for a 5-star. I think it's going to be on a case-by-case basis, and it's going to be a lot on who can help us right now. We'll pay those guys more. So it would be nice if Mylan would come back, certainly with the guys who have left, Quincy and Bryson Rogers. I think that it would certainly add depth and some of the guys a little down the line, I think Bode Payne Miller left. So you're basically left with Jeremiah and Brandon and Phillip Bell from last year. And then they brought in Devin McEwen from UTSA, who's a speed guy. He's really good, but there's not a whole lot of proven depth there. So Mylan is a guy who's been in the program, and in theory, you don't know how much Cortez Hankton is going to change stuff up. I can't imagine it's going to be too much. And maybe he's more maybe Mylan likes him more. Maybe he challenges him more. Maybe he untap something that Brian couldn't tap out of him. I don't know. It'll be real interesting if he does decide to stick around. I'm wondering if he tried to see if the grass was greener, maybe wasn't getting the offers that he thought he was going to get in terms of money, and said, you know what? I'm probably better off here.
Yeah. No, those are all valid points because, I mean, things change, right? You try to get in the portal, you like you say, someone recruited you here saying this number, you get in the portal and it's actually this number. This is what teams are actually willing to do. And so things kind of splits, change you up a little bit. So Tim, do you have any other?
I mean, it's hard to gauge future competition. Like, it's hard to gauge. I remember being a young player thinking, man, there's a lot of guys who came in the year before me that are pretty good. Well, I was confident coming in. That confidence is not. I'm not as confident now. I was able to compete, get on the field early, and have a good career. But the things that, if I go through the list of things that happened for me to get there, like, those aren't things that you can predict. And the reality is now they're competing with ghosts. Like, you going into the new year, and I don't know how many guys are bringing in the transfer portal. So I might be in line to compete, but they bring 3 more safeties in. It's like, what?
Right.
I'm not competing with a fifth-year guy who, yeah, I may be better than, but nobody will ever know because I'm not just competing with what he does in spring ball, competing with what he did the last 4 years. It's like, so it is challenging when you don't have, when you can't predict what's going to happen next in terms of competition. So what you're really looking for, after you've been in the program for a few years, you're really looking for an opportunity to play. I want some money, but that how much you commit to me lets me know how much you really want me to compete for this starting position. And I think that's what a lot of guys might be searching for, especially the sophomore, the redshirt sophomore, junior type guy.
Yeah, because when it comes down to it, everyone has the same goal. Everybody wants to go to the NFL. And when it comes down to it, you have to make plays. And the best way to make plays is on the field. You got, like you say, Mike, you got to do it in practice first. You got to show that you're coachable. You got to be improving. Because if you're not doing those things, who could trust you to ever get on the field to make that play, to get you to the next level? And that's sport. that's just sport when it comes.
No, it is. And you're right. Everyone wants to go. The sad reality is hardly any of them are going to go. And I know that they'll say, well, I'm not the one who it's not going to be. Well, it probably is. But yeah, you still want to go out there and put your best tape out there, put your best effort out there, and just kind of get the shot. And Chimdi makes a really good point. The guys who are entering their redshirt sophomore year, this is their third year now. They're eligible to go to the NFL after the season. And if they have minimal reps, then they're thinking, okay, I'm probably going to have to stay another year. And that clock starts ticking on the NFL because, you want to get to your second contract is really the one that sets you up. The rookie contract is nice, but the second contract is what sets you up. And so it used to be you were clamoring to get there. Now with the NIL, if you can make some good money, it's like, you know what? It's not as bad sticking around, but you're right. Everybody has that goal of seeing the shield and getting into the NFL.
Yeah. One last thing that's important with these roster decisions, getting, guys who've proven it on the field, is that schedule next year. I mean, you start off, you play Texas, you got Indiana on the schedule. When you look at that schedule, you have to start fast. And when you're bringing a lot of unproven guys up, maybe a nickel position, a safety position, guys who have to do a lot of the communication and make a lot of the adjustments, it's going to be tough to break guys in going into that schedule. So that's something to keep in mind as well.
Definitely. It definitely ramps up from what we had this year. I mean, it was Texas and it was Penn State, which was a down year, still kind of Penn State, and then Michigan and then Indiana. And it was really kind of bookends. The two best teams were at the beginning and at the end. And next year, I mean, USC is on there and Texas is on there again and Indiana's on there. And so it is incrementally a much more difficult schedule. And that is a good point. Experience. These guys have played in big games before. Earl Little has played Clemson. Terry Moore has played Clemson and they've played Miami. And so they're not going to be fazed by going into Austin and saying, oh man, we're facing Texas. Whereas a guy who's a freshman or maybe a redshirt who's played 10 snaps, they're saying, man, that's Arch Manning and that's Ryan Wingo and that's Cam Coleman. What am I going to do? So that experience, especially tailored to that schedule, that is actually a pretty good point. And I think that is one extra thing that Ohio State fans can take into consideration, that the coaches are looking at this not just from a talent standpoint, but how do they fit in with what we're going to do next year? Because we know we can't just play that tough Texas game and then coast for 6 games and then kind of ramp it up at the end, because they're going to be tested every other week, every third week or so with a tough game. So having that veteran presence in the lineup is certainly going to help.
Yeah, and that's funny because we're Ohio State. If we don't make the playoffs, it's going to be a lot of chatter, a lot of upset people, a lot of people that just don't understand. We don't want to hear about the young. It's going to be a lot of people that just don't understand. So we got to check that box of, beating Michigan, getting into that playoffs and kind of take it from there. Obviously, Ohio State was pretty close this year. The 2 teams we lost are playing for the national championship. So you can't, argue that there. But in college football, it's a 1-year deal. Now, what you did this year does not matter,
right.
to the next. So
That's
you got to
correct.
be able to wrap up and
they
get
played
ready to go.
Indiana. They played Indiana tougher than anybody else. So
yeah. So all right. So before we wrap up here, I guess we brought it up. Who's winning the national champion? Are we going with the Big Ten? Do you want to see? Is the U actually back? Who we picking here, guys? Who we got?
Well, I am. I have been anti-Canes ever since seeing Ohio State beat them. Well, really going back. I mean, obviously, you respect what the program did in the 80s and the 90s and how great they were and how they were just reeling off national championships. But it just warmed my heart when Tressel and all those guys said, we're going to kind of knock you down. I didn't really expect that Miami would be dormant this long because Ohio State beat them. So they kind of turned the tables a little bit. And it's a nice story. I mean, they've got the veteran quarterback in Carson Beck. They've got Mark Fletcher. They've got the really outstanding young receiver in Malachi Toney. They've got Bain and Mesidor. Indiana, even if they weren't talented, they just seem like a team of destiny. I mean, what Cignetti has done, and I've heard people talk, this might be the greatest 2-year turnaround or the greatest turnaround in college football history. Now, Bill Snyder back in the 80s came into Kansas State, which was a wasteland, turned them into a consistently winning program, but he didn't win 11 games his first year and didn't have them on the verge of a national title his second year. So what Cignetti has done is pretty much uncharted water. But I mean, people can look at Mendoza and they see his enthusiasm in the interviews. Kind of comes off a little bit as a dork, but he can put the ball right where he needs to put the ball. And their running backs aren't going to make your jaw drop, but they get 5 yards. They get 6 yards. And Cooper and Surratt are really good on the outside at receiver. And their defensive line is kind of a bunch of no-names, but they get into the backfield. And D'Angelo Pons is just he's undersized, but he's a really tough physical corner. I just think can Miami win? Sure they can. Any team can win any game. But the momentum that Indiana has and the way they've been kind of playing, I think Indiana wins. Do I think it's going to be a blowout like what they did against Oregon? No. I think they probably win maybe by about 10. I think the spread's 6 or 7? I think they'll cover, but I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I think that maybe 31-21 or 28-17, something in that area. If it's a blowout, it will be Indiana doing the blowing out. But I just think that Miami's defense, I think Miami's defense is too good to allow that to happen.
Yeah, I think it's a defensive struggle for most of the game. I just think Mendoza, you see the kind of difference between Ohio State, Miami, and Indiana, Miami, and it's going to be Mendoza's poise and ability to make plays versus that defense, in my opinion. Miami for sure has a path to win this game. They have a clear path, an opportunity to win this game, but I think the execution of Indiana is gonna edge them past Miami. So I'll go Indiana, and I kind of want Indiana to win, so it was going to be hard for me to go Miami anyway. So
yeah, and I'm on this bandwagon now, Mike. Since the Big Ten is the best conference in college football, it only makes sense that we win a national champion. So I'll go with the Hoosiers as well for this
3 years in a row. 3 years in a row for the Big Ten.
3 in a row. Yeah, that's the new trend. That's how it goes now. But hey, Mike, we really appreciate the time. Obviously, you've been doing this longer. You've been doing this since me and Chim was in elementary school. So you've been doing it a while. You've seen a lot. You know a lot of ball. So we really appreciate you taking the time to come in, talk to us, talk to the Bleav in Buckeyes crew. Give us a breakdown of what's going on with new and improved, maybe so, Buckeyes, I guess, going into the 26th season. We'll see who we're able to get together. But one thing for sure, I think we all agree, we got to get a kicker.
Yes.
We need a kicker. Got to get a kicker. But yeah, we appreciate it. We're going to wrap this up like we always do, Chim, with a nice OH.
Ayo.
Go Bucks.
All right, thanks for having me, guys.
Go Bucks.